All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, for a lot of you guys, this is your first time watching my lecture videos and stuff like that. Basically, how it goes is like this. Typically, I would be showing this in class, so you guys can see and things like that. But because I'm not there, and also I have sometimes students who are like juniors and seniors who work. Um, that typically they might miss some days and things like that. So I make videos like this so that you guys do not fall behind. And just in case something happens, you know, um, heaven forbid something happens to your family, to yourself, to someone who's close to you, things like that. But just in case something does happen and you miss school for whatever reason, you can still make up the work. All you have to do is basically get this worksheet that you have in front of you, and just as you see in the where it says warm up, right below your where it says to put your name, it says on there, you know, you can find this on YouTube. It says World History Week, in this case week one, and tells you the name of the video. And if you look on the side, it says the QR code is in the back because all you have to do is basically get your phone, right? Um, Go to your photos, like you're going to take a picture and put it over the QR code if you've never done that before. And it'll say on there, you know, on the like Safari or whatever your internet may be, to go to it, to click on it, and it'll give you the list. It'll take you to my YouTube channel and it'll give you the list of videos. And all you have to do is just basically find the video and it'll say it right there World History, Week One, uh, early man. So that's all you have to do. Okay. And then once you get that done, you turn it in, and again, make sure your name's on it. Because again, if your name's not on it, I don't know who it is, whose paper it is. You won't get credit. Okay. Uh, so that's why I do that. Okay. So this will continue throughout the school year and things like that. Okay. So it's not just because I'm not there in class right now. It's I do this all year long. I make these videos for you guys. Okay. So today's lesson is going to be about early man. Okay, we're going to talk about the caveman and the difference between like Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens. What's the difference and things like that. I know some of you guys learned about this back in sixth, seventh grade and some of that, but I've come to realize um, a lot of my students either can't remember or weren't paying attention back then. So when I mentioned some stuff about like Macedonians, the Greeks, Romans, some people were just looking at me with a blank face. So that's why I go back to the beginning and point out some important things that happened. So that way you guys realize how did we get to this point in history as we're at right now? A lot of things happened. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. So here are your standards, the essential questions. The objective today for this lesson, we're going to analyze the difference between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. We're going to examine the significance between growing food and hunting or finding it. Okay. Then we're going to create an argument on whether Neanderthals would be welcomed in our society if they hadn't been phased out. And you're going to see that there are some differences, not just in behaviors between the two, but even physical features between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Okay. Yeah, I made that last year and I forgot to take that off. So it was fun. All right. Now, here is on your worksheet, you see the picture, this exact same picture on your worksheet. Okay. Um, my question to you is this for number one, to analyze this picture, look at it, break it down. What do you see? Now, based off that, what do you think is going on here? So look at the figures, look what they're doing, look at the little things here and there. what do you think is going on? So look at this one group over here, look at this other group, and it's kind of hard to see that upper group, the ones that really high on the rock. It's kind of hard to make out what it is, but use your best guess, okay? And tell me from your analysis, from what you can see, what do you think is going on? Okay. So, um, oh, also, I forgot to mention, remember, this is your opinion. Okay. So do not put something like, I don't know, because that's not going to get you any points. Okay. Look at it. Really take a wild guess, take an educated guess. That's really what I'm looking for. I know you don't know definitively what they're doing or the purpose of whatever they're doing, but use an educated guess based off what you see. It looks like this, or based off because I see a couple of these figures doing this. I think they're probably doing this. You know. So tell me. All right. So we're gonna so write your response, pause the video, because we're moving on to the next slide of notes in three, two, one. Now, historians rely on proof. Okay. Um, Now, what is proof? Basically, documents, written records, pictures, something that proves this thing, whatever it may be, actually happened. Okay. Anything else that says, "Oh, well, I heard or I think this happened back in the day," that's a theory. Those are possibilities. But unless there's proof, that's all it is, just a thought or a theory. Okay, that's what's important in history. And this is where the problem comes with early man, because early man didn't know how to write. So it's not like they wrote on the cave wall saying, on Tuesday, me and Ted went to go hunt and we found a bobcat and it took both of us to corner it and kill it. They didn't do that. Instead, they drew pictures, on the walls, as you can see from this picture, as your warm up should as well. Um, but because of that, it's kind of hard sometimes to interpret, just like your warm up picture. Some of you guys are like, "Oh, I know exactly what they're doing," or "I have an idea at least what they're doing." Some of you guys may have had trouble, like on that warm up picture, going, "It looks like this. Maybe this is happening." And that's the same thing with historians. We see things and we're like, okay, it kind of looks like this may be going on, but we don't definitively know unless it's like crystal clear. The picture is, you know, well drawn and it's a series of pictures to basically illustrate what's happening. Okay. Now, we use things like bones, tools, and other fragments to basically help us piece together what happened in the past and understand what life was like back then. Okay. Um, and again, like I said, cave paintings help us because it illustrates kind of like comic strips and things like that. It helps us to realize what life was like. What tools they had because they would paint and draw what tools they had as best to their ability. You know. Now, early man, there was a thing called hominid. Hominid is the early man that started walking upright. You know, so I'm sure you've seen the pictures of the guy with the hunchback and things like that. And as the next picture goes, he's standing more up, and it gets to the point where it's the person who looks like us, walking straight up and good posture and things like that. That's the hominid. That last one, the one who's upright. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. There was actually like two variations of humans back in the day. There was Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Now let's look at Neanderthals really quickly. The first Neanderthal was found in Germany, okay? And they lived about 100,000 BC to about 30,000 BC. Right? That was the time when they were around. Um, Now, after the first body was discovered in Germany, other bodies were found basically all over Europe and in current day Turkey, you know. So they're basically in that area of the world, in the European area, Middle East area. Um, they use what made them significant is they actually use stone tools. They realize that stone is a lot better than like sticks. You know, stone can last longer. So they used a lot of their tools from stone. Another thing that made them significant is that you know they would bury their dead. When someone died, they just like, oh well, Ted just keeled over right there, he's dead, and then walk away. You know, no, they took the time to dig a hole and put the body in there to protect it from the animals and the elements, rain and things like that. So that was pretty significant. Okay. Now, Homo sapiens, their body structure, their skeleton, their is basically like ours today. We share the Homo sapiens anatomy. Okay. Now, where did Homo sapiens first show up? Basically, they first appeared in Africa about 150,000 to 200,000 years ago. Okay. Now, what happened was this: the Homo sapiens actually overtook the Neanderthals around 30,000 BC. Now, there's been different theories about what happened to the Neanderthals. Did the Homo sapiens just basically have a war with them and killed them off? That's one theory. Another one is that the Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens actually like came together and through genetics and dominant genes and stuff like that, the Neanderthals kind of withered away because their DNA structure um, wasn't as strong, it wasn't as dominant as the Homo sapiens. So that's another theory about why the Neanderthals are no longer around. Okay. Homo sapiens were known to be nomads, meaning they would travel around where the food went. If it got cold, they moved south. So if you saw like the movie Ice Age, the first one, when those like caveman people were leaving and then the baby got left behind, like it's been a while since I see the movie. I think it got left behind if I remember right. And that's what happened. They traveled away from the cold and stuff like that. They stayed in where the food was for as long as they could, and then no, we got to move, we got to go. And again, we nowadays people can trace our genetic roots back to Homo sapiens and not Neanderthals. Now, this is what I mean that there were two types, people. So if you can look at the different skulls on either one, the top one or the bottom one, but the bottom picture shows the real difference between the two. So if you look at the right here above the brows on the Neanderthal, which is the one to your right, it's bigger. It's like sticking out. So imagine this part of your forehead, that bone you feel right here. Imagine that sticking out a little bit more. So the brow bridge, as they call it, just bam. The forehead, as you can see, is going a little bit more of a slope, more of a steep slope than the Homo sapiens. Okay, and look at the back of the head. That's another big one. The contour of it. Okay, if you look at it, it's way out there. The Neanderthal is really sticking out in the back, whereas the Homo sapiens, like you and me, it's just in a sense normal. Um, and if you look at the nose, how big the nose is. That's another big difference, as well as the jaw. Look at that jaw, and look at the teeth. Bigger, the jaw's huge, massive, compared to the Homo sapien. So imagine somebody walking around like that in today's society. Forehead or back of the head sticking out, big old brow right here, huge nose, big jaw. I mean, just massive. And the teeth are bigger and just, you know, imagine somebody like that walking around today. Okay. And hopefully you're paying attention to this part and you're getting a visual because this is going to help you on your question at the very end of this lesson. Now, How did early man get their food? Again, the nomad way: hunt. Hunt and find food, whether you're going to go kill an animal or whether you're going to look for berries and things growing on bushes and trees and things like that. You know, uh, also, like I said, food growing from the ground, like it's popping up, or food that's in the ground, something like carrots and potatoes. Those are roots, you know. So that's another way people hunted for food. Now, the two main ways to have food constantly year round is number one, to grow it yourself. Instead of letting nature take care of it, you plant the seeds, you pick it, and things like that, and take care of your crops. The other one is to have farm animals. Basically, you're taking this like wild pigs, like boars and things like that. Um, you capture them, you domesticate them, you calm them down, and you mate them, and they have little babies, little baby pigs, and things like that. And then, hey, mama, papa, hey, now's your time to die. We have meat now. And then the babies grow up, and you feed them, and you know, that's domesticating. Okay, that's how you have food year round. Now, because of that, the Neolithic revolution started. Um, the nomads basically decided to settle, like you see in that top picture. Instead of going around living place to place, they decided, let's have a structure, a home, and let's grow crops, grains, vegetables, became a stable. And, again, when they knew the seasons, they knew this grows at this time, this other thing grows at this time, and they were able to have food constantly throughout the year. Again, they realized too, animals, if you control them, you hold them, you breed them, you have them, you'll have continuous amount of meat, milk, and like leather, wool, you know, um, furs, hides to keep you warm during the winter. And they also realized, some animals don't taste good, but man, that animal is big, it's strong, it could be used to help, you know, bring down a tree, or tear through this really hard ground, things like that, or move this heavy object. So they realized, like, hey, maybe this animal can be used instead of just food, something else. Now, what kind of shelters were there back then? Well, there was three major ones. First one, obviously, caves. Nature made shelters and stuff like that. Sometimes even these caves at the deep end would collect water through rain. It would come into the caves and collect down at the bottom, and people had, fresh water. Another one, tents, teepees, things like that, um, to basically keep them, keep a nice shelter and things like that. And also, you know, um, early man realized these tents and teepees easy to put up and easy to take down, and it provided a good amount of shelter from the elements and stuff like that. Um, and the last one was stone walls. Some of them even learned how to make like stuff like close to bricks. Make dirt, make it hard so that it could be used to block the elements, wind, rain, things like that. Okay. So those were the three major ones. So what's the significance of all that stuff about having food and stuff like that? Well, because guys, you have to remember this. There are three things that you need to survive. Okay. You need food and water, shelter, and clothing. Those are your three basic needs. And once you have those things, you're basically good. you know, then you don't have to worry about like, oh, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Things like that. Once you have those things and secured, you can then think about other things instead of just surviving to the next day. And that's where civilization begins. Okay. And there are six things that are basically what historians feel are the most important when it comes to civilization. Once you've gotten the three needs taken care of, then you can concentrate on making your civilization, your group bigger. Think about cities, you know, having more people, having protection and things like that. Everyone watches each other's backs. Then you can think about government, how to rule things. What kind of rules do we all need to follow in this village, in this group, in this city? Then comes like religion. Then you people start thinking, why are we here? How does this work? Why does at this time of the year it get really hot like summer, and then it gets really cold, winter? What's the purpose of that? Maybe there's a god that's doing things, or one god that's doing this and this and that, another one, and then there's several gods doing several things, so religion starts playing a factor. Then social structure, people like, hey, we're up here, this next group of workers, and then there's children, you know different class structures. Then comes writing. you know okay, let's try to communicate, instead of, oh, let's just try to survive. No, how can we talk to one another, communicate with not just ourselves but other people? How can we record our history? you know so then comes like art, again, showing who the people are, their creativeness and things like that. you know all these things could not exist if you had to worry every day about where your next meal going to be, where you're going to stay, and can you keep warm or cool with your clothing. Okay, but once you have those three things, then civilization can really start, and that's where these other six things really come up. All right, so here is your question. Okay, now again, make sure um, you write it out completely. Okay. Actually, hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I kind of added a writing prompt. I was meaning to do that, so I do apologize, but now it's there. So if you don't know how to start this response, this sentence completely, there it is on the bottom, right, to help you out. So again, if Neanderthals had not been phased out, right, they were still around to this day. Again, remember, big if you go back to the pictures, I explained visually how they would look like and some of that. Um, so if they were still around to this day, do you think they would be harassed or discriminated against by people like you and me? Okay, so again, if you kind of forgot how a Neanderthal kind of looked like, just go back to the skulls and look at the difference between a person like our skull and then the other skull, the Neanderthal skull, and think to yourself, would do you think if they were around still to this day, looking the same way, that they would be harassed or discriminated against? And why do you think that? So again, the writing prompts on the bottom. I believe if Neanderthals hadn't been phased out, they would or wouldn't, whichever one you believe, be harassed or discriminated because, and explain why do you think they would or why do you think they wouldn't be? Okay. And again, it's your opinion. Now, the only way you can truly be wrong on this question is if you don't answer it, you copy off someone else, or if your answer makes no sense whatsoever. If you put something like, they would because Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse are just mean like that. What are you talking about? You know, that makes no sense. So you would get no points. Okay. And again, if you just put no because they wouldn't, that's not an answer, because then I could say, yeah, I don't know what the question would be if I just read that. Well, what's the question? Whereas if you wrote it like this, I believe if Neanderthals hadn't been phased out, they would or wouldn't be discriminating. Just by reading that, I know what the question is. You see what I mean? So don't um don't quit on yourself. Don't just, I just want to get this done with. That's gonna knock off a lot of points, and then trust me, you're gonna be paying for it later on when you get your grade. And I tell you, hey, you got a D plus, and you're like, oh, I did all the work. Yeah, but your answers, they're horrible. So you lost a lot of points on that, you know. So yeah, and remember, I do read your responses. I like to read them. I like to see what you think, what you believe in. Okay. So do not skip out on this. Do not just write whatever down. Okay. Write down, tell me what you really believe. Okay. Now, once you finish this question, you are done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Um, so I'll talk to you guys later. You have a good day. You guys take care. Be safe. All right.